So this question is about attending to the more musical aspects of practice once you have the notes learned, and kind of what's the best practice for thinking about tone and tone quality and all of that. Now, I do want to just say that my pedagogy is that, and I think most teachers agree with me on this, and that is it doesn't make sense to kind of attend to one parameter at a time. So let's say you're like, okay, I'm just going to learn the notes. I'm not even going to worry about bowings. I'm not even going to worry about dynamics. I'm not even going to worry about those things. I just need to get the notes. And then you're like, okay, got the notes. Now I guess I better work on the bowings. And you get that. And then it's like rhythm. How's my rhythm? Get a metronome. So anyway, when you do that, while you're focusing on one thing and letting other things kind of go, you are really reinforcing whatever bad habits or bad rhythms or you're doing the wrong bow and your arm is getting used to it. So it just takes longer. It takes so much longer to learn that way. So my philosophy is that you just brick by brick by brick. You attend to intonation. You make sure you're on the correct bowing, the bow direction. You make sure your bow distribution is correct, that you are at the right dynamic. You have a good tone at the same time for one note, and then one note to the next note. All those things, everything, you are going to practice all those things at the same time, but just one note to one note, and then the next note to the next note, right? You can do that. You can. You actually will learn a lot faster that way, and it's more effective, and you don't waste time. Now, let's just say that you're in a place though where you have put in some practice time, and now you do want to make your performance more musical. You want to, really pay more attention to your sound quality. Then I think it's a really good idea to record yourself, to video record yourself, and start watching, okay? And find the trends. What is happening with your bow? So I think it's really helpful to even record yourself, again, just a few measures at a time. Turn off the sound when you're watching yourself play. When you watch the playback, turn the sound off. Because we get really caught up in what we're hearing. We're like, oh, I didn't know that was so out of tune. So I think it can be distracting. And just watch. So, how is your bow traveling? Where is your bow traveling? And if you see things like your bow right here. So you're just playing and you see that your bow is traveling somewhere between the middle sounding point zone, the middle, and the fingerboard, red flag. What's happening? Why is that? Because in solo playing, and that's what we're doing when we're practicing, or should be doing, we should be at least at the middle, up here toward the bridge, and that all of our dynamics can be accomplished that way. Now, there are exceptions, and certainly if mostly you are playing in an orchestra and you're learning orchestra parts, that's a whole different matter. There are times where, yes, you are playing near the fingerboard, but it is an orchestral effect. But when you're just practicing your etude or your piece, whatever you're working on, watch and then isolate. It's like, oh, my bow is traveling down here. I didn't even know it. So now I need to stop and I need to practice keeping my bow in the middle. I'm going to pay attention to that. That's the first step, because you're not going to improve your sound quality if your bow is traveling too close to the fingerboard. It just can't happen. And then another thing is to, as you're listening to yourself, is to be singing in your head along with your playing. Okay, and as you sing, no one can hear you because this is all done, right? It's silently. As you sing as if you are a professional singer on stage and you are as expressive as you can and you are imagining how you want this to sound. And now you're listening to your recording and you're like, oh, wait a minute. in my head, I want this sound to build, but I didn't do that. So now I'm going to go back and now I'm going to practice because I want to take what I can imagine this sounding like and I want to try to replicate that. So, use smart tools in this way. Be methodical. You just by playing and not getting different results is a clue to really change it up. And, I have a lot of suggestions on Violin Lab. I have a whole practice course that is all about, taking a piece of music and taking it from, just looking at it for the first time to kind of mastery. And then another part of the same post was about like when to move on. Like, how do you know you've done all there is to do? And like, sure, it's true. I mean, hypothetically, nothing is ever perfect. It's never like we can ever say, you know what, that was the most perfect thing I've ever done in my life. I've learned it. It's time to move on. I mean, that's kind of never going to happen. So we are, you can be in the state of polishing something where you know yourself enough to know that you've kind of hit a little bit of a ceiling. It's like, this is as good as I am going to get now at this moment in time. I can always go back and review this later, or I'm going to put it on the back burner, and I'm not going to do it all the time, but I'm going to pull it out every now and then and just see what comes to light. So I have a rubric. There's a link to your post. Go to the description where I have your YouTube avatar, and then there's a link where I have a rubric where, this gives you a good idea of how of the parameters of learning a piece and where you are in terms of these things. And so it just gives you some concrete guidelines as to know when to move on. So this person is asking about, I think, what is realistic to think about learning the Bach Chaconne? And you can apply that to your own questions. I mean, you might have a piece that you love and you think, oh my gosh, this is so great. I really, really, really want to play it. Maybe you look at the music and you're like, well, it looks so hard, but is it as hard as it looks? Like, would I have the skill to do it if I could just sort of process the notes? And, the first thing is that as you progress and as you go through repertoire and etudes and all those kinds of things that you do when you're on a path to becoming, a masterful violinist, you start to layer all these skills, and your reading, your ability to look at the page and know exactly what you're going to have to do, all that progresses together. So generally speaking, if you did look at some music and you're like, I don't even know what to do, I don't know where to start, probably you don't have enough skill to learn it or to play it. But the place to start, at least, is to, write down, okay, what am I going to have to learn to be able to play this? Now, the Chaconne, I don't think is any more difficult than the other very difficult, movements in the Bach sonatas and partitas for unaccompanied violin. There are some fugues in there, I think, that are grisly difficult. The Chaconne just sort of has that reputation because it is long and it has a really wide range of technique. There are lots of chord and double stop work. There are very fast passages, so it just, like I said, it encompasses many different techniques. So if you are not sure, if you're like, well, what is this going to require? Well, I think a good place to start is just to, inch by inch, just walk through each hand, and then get your pencil out and make a list and say, okay, well, I see at the beginning, I have to hold my fourth finger down. I have a low 2. Okay, that's a bit of a stretch. Okay, am I right? F natural. Together, oh wow, that's a big stretch. So write down, extended stretches, what am I going to have to do? Start stretching. Start stretching my hands and doing conditioning and stretching exercises. Now, I've done this in other videos, but literally, manually, stretch out your fingers every day, several times a day. Don't hurt yourself, but 30 seconds at a time. Just stretch these fingers just so that the natural spacing between your fingers starts to lengthen. We can stretch stuff, Think about people who do yoga all the time. They get pretty stretchy. So you're going to stretch and then, stretching exercises, fingers down on one string, maybe hold an extended stretch and do some taps. So, all right, I know I need to do that. All right, you look through there some more and you're like, all right, well, I see some high positions. Yeah, I see something that's fast and it's high and measure 86. So, all right, maybe I need to do some 3-octave scales. Maybe I need to work on building speed with 3-octave scales. What position is that? Do I know what position that is? Okay, maybe review positions. All right, so you're going to just analyze, you're going to walk yourself through. So it's not just some big, hazy question mark in your mind, and you're going to make a list of things. And then you're going to find the resources so that you can start, building the requirements and the necessary skill. Now, as far as becoming more acquainted with the score and the notes so that you even know, you can look at it and say, all right, what am I supposed to do? I think a really great thing to do is to, watch a performance, have your score, slow down the video player. I actually have, and I'll put a link to this. It's so amazing. This is for the Bach Chaconne. So I took different performances of the Chaconne and I synced them to the score. So this will link you to my sound slice player. You can, which is the most amazing thing. I love this tool. You can just even click and drag a measure, just a measure, and then you can toggle between performers and you can slow the speed down really, really a lot. And then you watch and you're like, okay, well, this is what it takes to execute that. And you watch it over and over and over and over and over. Then combined with your own observations of, what are the things you're going to have to work on? And you get busy, you get out the Kreutzer etudes or the Flesch 3-octave scales and get busy learning the skills that are, in the Chaconne. I do love it that adult learners have high aspirations. Because they love the violin and they love music so much. And there are pieces that they have always wanted to play. And just that alone, I think really helps the learning, accelerates the learning process. Most kids do not go to a lesson and like, I've always wanted to play the Bach Chaconne. So that is just one of the many reasons why I really enjoy working with adults. And all right, well, good luck. So this next question is very good. It's something that I think about a lot. And it is a problem, and that is that we all are easily able to not notice notes that are out of tune while we are playing, yet have an incredible ability to hear that they're out of tune when we are listening back objectively to a recording or to someone else play. Objectively, everyone I think has a pretty good ear. Subjectively, it's a different story. So, the goal is to get our subjective listening as good as our objective listening. Now, I don't know that that's possible for it to ever be the same, but, it still is, I think, the way we have to look at this. And the first thing that I think is really important is your mindset. And so I just tell myself this all the time. I say this, and for me, it alleviates some of the frustration. And that is, don't take for granted that just because I've played a note 1 million or 2 billion times, that it's going to be in tune. that every measure is unique. Every placement for every finger has a unique context, right? Because we're playing different pieces of music, so the contexts vary. And that I'm just going to teach myself. I'm going to teach myself the placement for every note, for every measure in my music. And for me, it puts me in a real positive frame of mind. Now, another really great thing to do, and I've been meaning to do a separate video on this for a long time anyway, and that is how to use software and technology effectively. Because if you have a tuner clipped onto your violin or on your stand or anything like that, and you're playing and you're watching it and you see, you don't get a green light, and then you move your finger till you get a green light, it's really not going to help, because you are bypassing the oral perception of pitch. You are just going from your eyes to your finger, your eyes to your finger. So what we have to train is perception, and we have to train oral perception. So there's a piece of software that I just love. It's Intonia. It is very reasonably priced. Now, I am not, I don't get paid for, my recommendation this, I promise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a different app so I can capture my screen as I'm demonstrating. But here's a great way to work, I think it's a way to, again, like I said, is to start to be more keenly aware of intonation while you're playing. So let me switch apps. Okay, so I have Intonia installed on my desktop. I prefer it on a desktop than to the phone app. You just get more information on the screen. And the default setting is in record mode. So when you open it up, it's kind of ready to record. All you do is hit the space bar. Just so you know, I have my settings on C major Pythagorean. I just leave it on that because it works for any key, and it is specifically the intonation model for melodic playing on the violin. So that's what I set mine to. And so I just push the space bar, and what I'm going to do, okay, and these are the steps that I take, is that I take some measure or two of music. I just practice. And as I'm recording myself. I'm not looking at the screen at this point. I don't want real-time feedback just yet. So I'm trying to be as active a listener as possible. And I had this ongoing question in my mind. Okay, are these the best placements for these pitches? Do I feel confident that they're in tune? I am going to repeat a section until I feel confident, until there's a removal of doubt, until I'm like, that sounded really in tune. Okay, so that's my process. So here we go. Focus on this one. Okay, I think that last one was it. Okay, so, all right, not bad. I got the white lines. That's what we're going for right at the end, and that's what I stop. I stop when I feel like I got it in tune. Now, what I do is I kind of look back, and I look for any sort of trends here. All right, so I see some little blue lines right in here. And what I can do is just kind of listen. And then I'm going to section off a little bit. And then I'm going to go to play mode. And then I'm going to push the space bar and I'm going to listen. So when I hit those Ds, that B flat was low, right there. I'm going to resection off right here. Yeah, that first D was even a hair flatter than the second D. Yeah. Like, so I hear that now. I didn't. Okay, so I see this as, all right, I played that a little bit flat. So I might just work on that little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to record mode, and it'll automatically put me at the end of where I had finished recording before. So I want to make sure that this wasn't an accident, because when I stopped, because I thought it was in tune, I mean, it took a while, but okay, yeah. So my pinky, oh, interesting. Okay, so my pinky there's the E's are a little pink. The E's are a little pink. Okay, let me section this off and listen. Okay, now this is fine tuning, and you might have a lot more, pink or red and blue lines than I've just demonstrated. And trust me, there are other passages in here that if I were just to record right now, you'd see a lot more color in the results. So now another thing you can do is real-time feedback. So the way I would do this is a combination of looking and listening. So I'm going to, let's say that I'm really want to get so consistent with the third and fourth fingers right there. So let's see, I'm going to be recording. And now I'm looking at the screen, and I'm going to get it in tune. Okay, and now I'm going to do that back and forth. I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to feed this fact. I'm going to say, this is how that sounds. Listen to how this sounds. Listen to the relationship. Listen to the spatial relationship. Listen to how far away these pitches are from each other. And it's like, how many of these can I do and get those white lines? How many? And every time I'm doing it, I am listening for what I just taught myself. This is how that sounds. This is how that sounds. And I think this is just a way smarter way of going about practicing intonation, but more importantly, improving our perception of intonation while we're playing, right? That's the hard part. So hard. All right, well, I hope this gives you some good ideas about how to proceed. So this question is from someone who is frustrated at, going from seeing the information on the written page to executing it, and to do it fairly quickly. There are so many skills in our subconscious mind that allow for good sight reading. for the first thing is, if you don't understand the concepts of music notation, like if you're not really sure what the rhythms mean, what a dotted quarter is, if you're not exactly sure what the key is or anything like that, then you do have to get that information. I have a great note reading and music theory course for violin, exclusively for violin, that I highly encourage you to take, so that you have the information. And then it's a question of then practicing the skills. So it is important what you can do without the violin. So I really highly recommend doing analysis before you start playing. I would say for a little while, separate the notes, the pitches from the rhythms. So without the violin, you are going to start to verbally count. Now, don't be all 1, 2, 3, and 4. No syllables, no numbers, no whatever. You just need to make sound. You need to make sound, and you need to be able to keep a steady pulse and know where you are metrically. And what I mean by that is where the downbeat is. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You always know where the downbeat is. Okay, so I am moving my hand on a downbeat to a pulse. Okay, now I'm going to stop. To a pulse that I have going on in my head. Okay, so inside my brain, I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I'm not saying the numbers. I'm going Okay, so here's the downbeat. Okay, now I can just start talking about any other thing, and I still have this pulse going on, right? So being able to keep a steady pulse and have a downbeat in mind is key, okay? Takes a while to get there. So you look at the rhythms, you look at the music, and you get that pulse in your head so strong. I'm going to slow it down a little bit. And here's a piece. This is on Violin Lab. I teach it. It's by Dvorak. It's this adorable, beautiful melody. Okay. So what you're going to do away from the violin is, first you're just going to, and I recommend don't do any more than, say, 4 measures at a time. That's it. So you get your beat. 1, 2. Let's slow it down. Bum, bum, bum. And find a way to move, okay? So I don't care what you do. You move to the beat. Tap your foot if you want to, bob your head, doesn't matter, but you have to have a physical manifestation of beat when you are doing this kind of work, because it is difficult to develop the sense of an interior pulse. And many students, I can see it, I can tell it, I can see that there's an absence of an interior pulse, because I can tell that there's no movement in their body. So if I've had a student like to say a rhythm and they're like 1 pa ta 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 ta, like I can tell there's no beat in there. So you got to do something. You can clap the beat if you want. You can clap the beat, and then you're just going to say the rhythms. Da 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 bum, 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 bum. Okay, let's do something a little trickier. Let's jump down to this measure. Bum, bum, ba-da-dum. Okay, so now that takes skill and knowledge. I could easily do that. And if you're not able to, then you have to go, all right, where are the beats? So this is a really important step. If you cannot see where the beats are. So when I see this measure, I see a half note. There's the 1, and I already know the 2 is on the second beat of that half note, I see the 3. I see the 4. And fortunately, the rules of music notation favor that. It favors the partitioning of beats. So the fact that these 2 notes are joined by a beam, it shows you, you're like, oh, I can see that because those are grouped together, that's a beat unit. So I can see the 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1, 4, So once you have a handle on the rhythms without playing, using your voice to say the rhythms, that's the quickest way to input that information into your psyche. Then you do an analysis of the left hand and you recognize relationships. You see the D and you say, it's like, okay, I'm starting at the top. This is a D. I'm going to an F, D to F. What is that? So if you know your music theory, you know it's a minor third. You know that F natural is a low 1. Now maybe you're already shifting and you can play it in third position. And then you have an F, and you have another F. And you're like, oh, F to F, octave. Octave. If I'm in first position, that's E string to D string. That's an octave. First finger. So you observe everything you possibly can, and then you try to put what you have already practiced in the way of rhythms to what you have analyzed in the way of left hand. So it's slow going, but you do it a lot. You immerse. And, there is something in common with people who say that they have difficulty reading music. And here's what they have in common. They don't do it very often because we don't like to do things that create a lot of friction. And so we shy away from those things. So, the first question I ask anyone who says, oh, I don't read music very well, I'm like, well, how often do you sight read? Do you sight read a piece of music every single day? No. So you got to do it a lot. And it really does slowly. You absorb it. You'll be able to do it.